Hi guys, welcome to another episode of our Java Tutorial Simplified course. I am Lamoha Igoroje, and if you haven't already watched our other tutorial videos, you should go ahead and watch the other videos so it will bring you up to speed with what we're doing today. So today I'll be talking about working with arrays in Java. So what are arrays? That's the first question you would want to ask yourself. An array is an object in Java that can contain several items or a list of items, or it contains items. Basically, it's just an object that contains several items, and these items, however, have to be of the same type. So we talked about types and variables in one of our videos where we talked about having integer type, double type, variable, string type, and several other type of variables. So an array is a collection or an object. Remember, we always said right from the beginning, think about Java as an object. It's all about working with objects. You have one object or the other that you want to work with. So an array being an object as well, it's just an object containing items, like I've said already. So one thing to note is that the items in the array must be of the same type. So just remember, whatever your array is, it must be storing values of the same type. There are other ways we can represent list of items in Java. We've got array list, we've got so many different functions or objects to use to represent list of items or to contain our list of items. We'll be going gradually. I'll try in the next course to cover another way of storing or working with lists in Java called the array list. But for now, I'm going to start teaching arrays from the first principles in Java. That's having a basic simple array. One other thing we need to know about arrays is that they are usually indexed from 0. So say you have 7 items in your array, right? You're going to have it counting at 0. So it was when we say it's indexed from 0, meaning that if you have 7 items in your array, the first item is at index point 0. So item 1 would be at index point 0. Item 2 is at index point 1. So it goes like that. So 7 items in the list would mean we have index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you always need to bear that in mind when working with arrays. It's something that once you get into working with arrays, or when you start understanding arrays or playing around with arrays, you would get it so easily. So we would take some examples today. One other thing we need to know is that you can declare an array first, just the way you declare other variables. Like when you want to declare an integer variable, you declare it, you can instantiate it first. That's like by saying what the initial value and initialize it first from when you declare at once, or you can do it separately. You can declare, then go further and instantiate, right? The same way, working with arrays, you can declare an array first and then you can instantiate it at once as well, or you could declare and then instantiate. We would see an example of doing both as we go along. So to create an array in Java, all we need to do is to give it what is the type. So it's an object that is going to contain our list of items or contain certain items, right? Of the same type. So you need to specify what is the type of the array you're working with. So for this first example, I'm creating an int. When you see int, it shows you that I'm creating an integer array and have given it a name. Our array just means a name. If you watch my other videos as well, where we talked about types, variables, and statements in Java, we talked about the fact that most variables always have a name that we can use to identify it in our program. So we've given the type integer. This double square brackets, open and close brackets, square brackets, indicates that we are creating an array. So whenever you see this double square brackets, you know that we are creating an array. So you give it the variable type, integer, you put the symbol to show that it's an array you want to create, an array object, and you give it a name. So that shows what the name of our object is. And what we are doing here is that we are instantiating using the word new. So new means we're creating a new instance of that object. When you say instantiate something, it just means create a, especially when you're using the term new to instantiate an object or a variable in Java. When you use the word new, right? Just get this. We have an object. We use new in front of it, saying equal to new this, meaning we're creating a new instance of that object. Remember this, when you have an object that says equal to new this, meaning you're creating a new instance of that object, right? And then you know what you're identifying the object as our array. So now new int 7. 7 here, so this is one way of creating the array. You create it like this and instantiate it at once, giving it a length. So I'm specifying what the length is. Once you do this, specify a length, you can give it 120. Once you do this in Java, that array becomes fixed with, it means that that array can only take that amount of items. So me giving it 7 means the length of my array is 7, meaning I can only store 7 items in that array. That's what it just means. So this is one way of declaring and instantiating your array. When you do this, where you give it the length, automatically all entries would be initialized to 0. So if I was to print out my array now, I've created an array and said, okay, it's a new instance of my array I'm creating and the length is 7, is fixed, right? I haven't put values in particular, but I have said it can only take 7 items. So automatically in Java, it will be initialized to 0. So I'll have 0 as the first item, 0 as the second item, 0 till 7 items, all being 0. Now to store data directly into our array, what I would do now is to specify the index. Remember I said arrays start counting from index 0. So the index numbers are 0 upwards, right? So this is the name of our array. To store data now, all I need to do is to say the name of our array, say the index point I want to store a particular value, and give the value I am storing. So because it's an integer array, I can just put my 1, which is an integer, literal, and I'm putting it into that position 0. So I'm saying my first item in that our array is 1. If I put this and say our array 1, meaning I'm saying at index point 1, so you're putting the index in the square brackets to say what are you pointing to, right? So our array with this index point 1 means go and point to my index point in that array, the position 1, right? And store the value 2. So I'm storing 2. Now, say I had another variable, integer variable, x, which was equal to 3. I can also store x into a position. So I'm saying our array, go to point 2, index point 2, that's point and look at that position in our array. Like go to that position where you have 2. That position, the second position, or in this case is the third position, because we're counting from 0, 1, 2. So meaning the third position in our list, like the third item rather in our list, the index point for that third item is 2. So I'm saying at that position, point to that position and put whatever the value of x is, right? So that is methods for storing data into our array. That's one way of doing it. Now, another way, which is more straightforward, simple sometimes, if you have little items you want to store in an array, and you just need a quick array, and you know what your values are, you know what your items that you're storing are. One way to do that is that you create an array. So I'm creating an integer array here again, and I'm saying new array, and I'm just using, the curly braces that we use to quote or to cover statements in Java, right? You just use that curly braces, open, close the curly brace, and put all your values in between, separating them with a comma. That's like you storing directly. And automatically in Java, once you put a certain number of values, so we've put 2 in, so I created an array called new array. I put 2, I put 7, I put 4, put 8, 6, 9 inside, right? What I'm saying here, or automatically, is that the length of my array is 6. So we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So meaning I have 6 items in my array. The index point would be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That would be index, right? Indexes, right? Rather, indexes of that array would be 0, 1, as in 0 through to 5, because I said it starts counting at 0. So this is forward if your values are known. Now we're going to run this. So what I'm doing now is I want to test. I've said our array print out for me the item I have. So I'm just going to use a simple system.out.println statement in Java to print to the console what is the object, or sorry, what is the value of that our array object, right? The index point 1, that's the item, the second item. When you see index point 1, meaning it's the second item in the list. So give me from that array what the second item is, and we can see from here we assign that the second item should be 2, right? So if I print out this, I'm expecting to see 2. Another one I want to print out is I want to print out from this new array that I just directly put in values, give me what the 5th item is in that array. And the 5th item, looking at this array, is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, meaning it should print out 9 for me, right? So we're going to run this now, and I'll just click run. Let's see what the results is. So as you can see in my console here, you can see the first print statement, which is to print what is the value of the second item in our array, right? We get 2, which is correct. And then what is the 5th item? Oh, sorry, what is the 6th item in our new array? And it prints out 9. So it shows you that those values are indirectly. So that is correct and as expected, right? So it's just so straightforward, and there are so many things we can also do with the array. We'll be seeing some as we go on. One other thing before we continue that I would like us to do or to look at, excuse me. One other thing we're going to be looking at now is working with our arrays. So one thing we're going to be doing now, the next thing, when an array is instantiated and its length is fixed, right? I've said it before, it cannot change. What we could do, if you want to make the length of your array depend on other factors, like you want it to be dynamic, you want the length of your array, instead of it being fixed where, oh, you cannot change, you cannot go more than that array because it will give you an error, right? You could decide, okay, I want my length to vary, right? And if it's going to vary, meaning it's varying dependent on some certain factor or some certain conditions. So right now you want to say, okay, I have this condition, and when this condition is met, then set my length of my array to be this. So this is an example. I've got a test array I created here and just instantiated it as a null. Like this is how to instantiate if you've not actually given anything directly, or you could just, it's like declaring without actually putting anything, right? So this is a way of saying I'm declaring, because if you declare without instantiating, it will still give you a null pointer, right? So right now I've just declared and created this array called test array, and I have a counter or a value just called length, or sorry, a variable called length, right? And I instantiated that to 0. And then I've got another variable called num weeks, right, to represent the number of weeks. And length is representing the length of my array, right? Now, I'm using, this is the condition now, where I'm setting a condition to say, okay, the length of my array is going to depend on a certain condition if a condition is being met. So this is what I'm doing. If the number of weeks, right, is equal to 1, say I change this number of weeks to 1, it should say that my length should become 7. And then what it would do is, after it does that, if it meets this if statements, I'm giving it an if condition, right? If this is met and length becomes 7, then I'm using that length as I'm passing that length object now to create as the length to create my array, or to instantiate my array, create a new instance of the array. Does it make any sense? I'm going to repeat this one more time so that we can get it. I've created an array here, right? I haven't created a new instance, or I don't have a new instance for it. I just created it and initialized it as a null array, like a null pointer array, right? Now I have another variable, length, or len representing length. I have another variable, num weeks, representing number of weeks. So now I've set a condition. If my number of weeks is equal to 1, right, then that's I'm doing this statement. Remember, in our other tutorial where we talked about statements, we showed that statements have to be written in between curly braces. So what I'm saying here is, if the number of weeks is equal to 1, then the length becomes 7. Now I would pass that length variable into the new instance of my array I'm creating. So test array is now equal to create a new instance of this array for me, given that length. So that makes it more flexible, more non-rigid, right? Now I'm also giving another condition, that else if. So if, for example, num weeks is not equal to 1, it will look at, okay, what are that condition? So here I have another if condition, else. That's else says do this instead, else if this is not true, or it's not the case, check the next condition. Now else if num weeks equal to 2, right, the length should become 14. The length or len variable should become 14, and I'm passing that again in here to create a new instance of the array, using the array object, using that length 14. So saying my number of items I can take in that array is 14. So this is just basic simple way of like making it flexible, whereby it depends on some kind of factor or condition, right? So once we do that, the next thing we want to see is that I want to not play around with this array. Like I want to do things like, what can we do with an array? Right now we can get the length of the array, right? You can do so many things, sort the array, you can get the length of array, sort the array, just as some examples of what you can do with the array. There are so many other things you can do with the array. To work with arrays, to get the length of the array, you can just simply call the name of the array and do a dot length. So dot length is an object method, or a function that you can use. When you see dot, remember we said in one of our tutorials, I think it was the second one, where we talked about using, or the first tutorial actually, the introduction, and the second one as well, we touched about using functions from other classes, or from other classes, and refer to them as objects. I said it's a good practice to always think of, oh, I'm working with objects, I'm trying to manipulate objects, right? So some objects can contain some methods that you can use, or some functions as some people call it, that you can use in achieving what you want to achieve. So an array usually has a dot length function that you can use to return the length of that array, right? Now, one other thing, there's another class I would show you. If you go to our Oracle document, remember I told you Oracle document is your friend, where you'll be able to get a list of all the methods and objects you can use, to achieve your goal. So we have a class. So this is the class array object, Java API document. So it's always good practice to refer to your Java API document to get functions, to get methods that you can use from other classes. You would see all sorts of things that you can use to make what you want to achieve achievable with your program. So if you go to, there's an object that we're going to be using, an object class that we're going to be using called arrays. What does this class do? This class contains various methods for manipulating arrays, such as sorting, searching. It contains so many methods, and like I said, you can play with your array, you can sort your array, you can get the length of the array, you can use the array, set through your array for a particular object, use it in how you want it, whether you want to change your array to a list. So what you need to do is to import this class, the Java util arrays class, or java.util.arrays. You need to import it in your own class so that you can have access to all these methods. So you always import a class to have access, or you create a new instance of that class. So if it's a class in your program, you create a new instance to get access to the methods. If it is one that comes inbuilt with Java, the Java library, such as arrays are inbuilt, so you can just import it. And once you import it, you have access to all these different methods. And so we're going to be using a method called sort from this array. I'm going to show you where the sort method is. And we're going to be using a method to string to also, so you've got all different types of sort depending on what your array that you're sorting is. So we've got, because we're working with integer array, if you look at this sort here, it's a sort that will sort the specified array into ascending numerical order, because it's an integer sort as well, because you see integer array and your name of your array. So basically we're going to be using this method in our program. So let's go ahead and continue. So the first thing is, I just simply used the normal length function that comes with when you create arrays to get the length of your arrays. Now, to work with sorting the array, what I've done is import. This is how you import, in case you do not remember. You just use an import, and then you import that particular class that you would like to access certain methods. So this is a class that comes with the Java Java library, right? You can access it and you can use it. So what I've done here is simply say arrays.sort, right? And I give it my array that I want to sort. So I'm sorting this new array. So what was new array? New array was the array that I gave 2, 7, 4, 8. I had values and I just put in directly, right? That's my new array. So now I'm saying sort this new array, right? And I'm using arrays.sort to do that, to manipulate and sort that array. Now, the next thing is I want to now print out the new sorted array to see the values, or the values now that I would have for that array. And all I do is to use a system.out.println, and I call the arrays.toString, which will help to print the string version of that my new array. So it's going to give me a sorted version of it, because I did the sort before I'm printing out. So that's one thing to remember. If you want to manipulate your array, manipulate it using something as little as sort. You want to do that before you actually print it out to see, or use it when you want to use it. So I'm going to run this, and then we can see the output. And that's it. So the first one we printed was what is the length. You can see here, just ignore this 2.9. Those are the two from the first two print statements we had. Now this print statement where we printed out the length of the first one, we printed out the length of the array, is giving us 14 as the length. So which is correct, because what happened is we've done the array, test array length, to be dependent on whatever number of weeks is. So number of weeks here was equal to, we said if it's equal to 2, and yes, we set it to 2, right? So automatically the length is meant to be 14, which is correct. We will do it again, changing the number of weeks to 1, for instance, and see what the result will be of the length. Now the next thing we printed was to see our sorted array. We've sorted this array. We had 2, 7, 4, 8, 6, 9, and now if you look at what was printed out, we have 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9. It sorted it from in an ascending order and gave us the result. So that easy to play with the arrays. So what we'll do now is just also change number of weeks to 1 and see that the test array length would also vary and change. You know, it wouldn't be rigid to just being 14. So we're going to run this again just to see. And as you can see, the length of that our test array object is now 7. So it's a good way when you do not want your length, you want your length to vary depending on a particular condition. So it's a good way to do that. It's always advisable to use conditions to determine your length of your array if need be. So that's it for today. I would talk more about array list in the next tutorials, working with array list, and we'll now talk more about going into creating methods in other classes, manipulating and using them in our main class objects. Take care. We'll be talking more about arrays and lists in Java. Thank you.